Greetings. Welcome to the Daily Article Podcast. Today is Monday, July the 8th, 2024. I'm Chris Elkins, narrating today's article, written by Denison Forum co-founder and CEO, Dr. Jim Denison. In normal times, I would probably be riding on Hurricane Beryl after it made landfall this morning at Matagorda, Texas. The storm is expected to cause significant flooding in the Houston area and beyond. Or I would focus on the surprising results in France's parliamentary election, where leftists won the most seats, though no party won a majority. Or the vote in Iran that elected their first reformist president in 2 decades. Or the elections that empowered a center-left government in the UK. But these are not normal times, as a growing chorus is calling on President Biden to end his candidacy, and some even say he should resign from office. Mr. Biden continues to face what Axios describes as a credibility crisis as his support falls in the Democratic Party and yet another elected Democrat calls on him to exit the race. Mark Warner, an influential centrist senator, is working to gather support among his Democratic colleagues to ask Mr. Biden to drop his re-election bid. Major donors are defecting from the campaign. In interviews with more than 50 Democrats, the New York Times found that many see Mr. Biden's candidacy as unsustainable. And a half-dozen Democrats in the House of Representatives privately told colleagues yesterday that he should withdraw from the race. Some are blaming the media for covering up Mr. Biden's alleged cognitive deterioration. Others are accusing the media of exaggerating and exacerbating the crisis. This story within the story tells us much about our cultural moment and illuminates a biblical path forward. You may not know the name Jürgen Habermas, but the German philosopher's insights regarding Western democracy are vitally relevant to today's conversation. A recent foreign policy article explains his assertion that democracy is not just about free and fair elections. It requires open processes that form public opinions, which are then reflected by the voters. For example, the 18th century saw an increasing number of readers freely discussing novels in salons and coffee houses. Eventually, these discussions turned to political questions, leading many to expect their leaders to represent their views and to act for them. However, Habermas worried that capitalism's increasing reliance on manipulative advertising techniques would help destroy a free and open public sphere. What he failed to foresee was the rise of mass media in the 1960s. Accordingly, he eventually came to view the widely respected and economically successful newspapers and TV news of that era as resources around which entire nations could congregate each evening. That was then. This is now. Digital and social media have largely disrupted the communal and collegial news experiences Habermas saw as vital to a thriving democracy. Instead, they have given each of us a megaphone for trumpeting our personal views, researched and reasoned or not, and headphones for listening only to those views with which we agree. The controversy surrounding President Biden's cognitive abilities is Exhibit A. Everyone with an opinion has the ability to publish it. Evidence and commentary that do not align with our personal position can be ignored. Perception becomes reality or multiple realities. And these realities will largely determine the future of the leader of the free world. Last week, we discussed James Davison Hunter's lament that Americans have lost our, quote, shared moral code and the common assumptions about the nature of a good society that underwrite a shared political life, end quote. Apart from these, any society is likely to unravel a disintegration amplified by the fragmented media that consumes much of our culture. Our problem is even deeper, however. As St. Augustine observed, quote, "Men are hopeless creatures, and the less they concentrate on their own sins, the more interested they become in the sins of others. They seek to criticize, not correct. Unable to excuse themselves, they are ready to accuse others." According to psychologists, we deflect and project blame for our mistakes onto others to protect our own self-image. Our best response lies in an assertion made 3,000 years ago by someone who understood the depth of his personal failures and finitude. David prayed in Psalm 16, verses 1 and 2, "Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. He therefore made the decision in verse 8 that God is calling us to make today. I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. As a result, David could testify in verse 11, you make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. To sum up, we can put our trust in our elected leaders, but many will fail us. We can trust the media to inform us, but they're as fallen as we are. We can use social media to influence others, but we are as sinful as those we seek to persuade. Or we can share an ancient Gaelic prayer, first published in 1631, but as relevant as today's headlines. Jesus Christ, bend me to thy will, my feet to urge, my griefs to still, that even my flesh and blood may be a temple sacrificed to thee. No rest, no calm, my soul may win, because my body craves to sin, till thou, dear Lord, thyself impart peace to my head, light to my heart. Will you experience such peace and light today? We're grateful for our podcast listeners. If you find the Daily Article podcast helps you better understand today's news and cultural issues and then respond biblically, please rate and review the Daily Article podcast on the platform from which you subscribe. That helps people find and follow the Daily Article podcast.